hard to codify and therefore to contract over. There's a lot of belief that when you have those sorts of activities that are necessary for your business, that you should do it in-house, because then you don't have as many legal problems with contracting out. And that's been the sort of the folklore or the wisdom surrounding firms who do their R&D for a long time. It's obviously part of the competitive advantage. It's hard to codify. It's highly uncertain. There's all sorts of problems with opportunistic behaviour. However, this sort of view about keeping R&D in-house has been changing. It's been changing for quite some time. And now a lot of businesses are believing that if you want to buy the best brands in the world, you actually have to outsource it, because the best brands in the world for your particular problem aren't always found in-house. So we're privileged tonight to have two speakers from two quite different businesses who are going to talk to you about their business, which is supplying R&D type services for other businesses. And the first speaker is Dr. Alexander Gosling. He's currently a principal at Capstone Partners. Now, for nearly 40 years, I know a lot of people here know Alexander, but for nearly 40 years he's actually been working on process and product development, ranging from high-tech startups to smokestack industries. Alexander was the founding director of Invitec and was part of the management team that led Invitec to its public listing as Vision Systems, and then to its acquisition by the US Danaher Group. It sold for over $800 million. Alexander is a past national president of the Australasian Industrial Research Group, a past national president of the Australian Malaysian Business Council, and a fellow of the Academy of Technology and Engineering. After Alexander, After Alexander, we're going to hear from Associate Professor Seeman, who's Director of the Centre for Design Innovation here at Swinburne University. So Court's research has taken a different path. His focus is more on the relationship between people, technology and the environment as a complex adaptive system. And his scale of his research focuses on two different levels. The human scale, design and innovation, and at the larger societal scale. So, first of all, what I'll do, Alexander will come up and talk for 20 minutes, and we'll hear directly from Court, and then we'll go to Q&A after that. So can you please welcome Alexander Gosling.
Okay, that's great, thanks. Okay, thank you, Ben. Now, am I standing close enough? Can everybody hear me comfortably? Yes. Okay, so good evening all. Yes, as Beth has said, the topic is outsourcing and outsourcing of technology services. And I'm going to talk particularly about the provision of outsourced product development services, with Invitec as the case example. And I'm going to plot how Invitec has become a global leader in this field since its foundation here in Melbourne 40 years ago. I'll explain the history and some of the factors that I think are important in how we have achieved that success. But if you'll indulge me with a little bit of whatever the right word is, I'd like to give you an overview of Invitec today. I mean, I said just claimed some success, so I better provide a bit of data that it has been successful. So, what are Invitec's offerings? What are its typical clients, and what is its geographical market? Good working. So Invitec, what it offers is full journey product realization. The conception, the development, the engineering, the validation, and for those who need it, the manufacturing of products. Today, the main emphasis is on medtech, but it does include consumer and industrial products as well, to some extent in the range. But these are always elaborately transformed manufactures. Instruments, devices, equipment. We don't do drugs, we don't do reagents, we don't do new materials. In the next few slides, which I'll go through quite quickly but give you a few seconds to read, I won't insult you by reading through them. I'll give you an idea of the capability that we built up for this. The skill base that we cover and the business that we're in is evidently multidisciplinary. It's shown here, and again, as you'll see, a fairly wide range. Sorry, my papers are all sticking together. We need processes. Product development requires a well-defined process, and we have built up a set of processes that are efficient, well-integrated, and well-proven for demanding product development projects. And obviously this is particularly important in the medical area because products have to be developed according to processes that are going to satisfy the FDA and the other regulators. And our people, it all comes down to the people. We've got around 250 engineers, designers and scientists on staff to carry out the work. Our clients, today, our clients are primarily in the US. We have some in Europe and in Asia, and a few, but actually very few today, in Australia and New Zealand. To illustrate what sort of products I'm talking about, there's a few snapshots here. I'll take a couple of examples and do a bit of a dive into them. The one, do I have a pointer on this, do we know?
Yes, red.
I don't want to turn everything off. Oh, okay. So, okay, that's good. Okay, thanks. So, that's a product that's not particularly familiar in this country, but it was a product that we did for Coca-Cola in the US. What it does, it dispenses any one of about 200 beverages into the container that the customer puts forward. The container just touches the touchscreen, chooses the beverage that he wants, and the machine dosing concentrates into carbonated water, makes the particular Coke product out of the range of 200 or so that it wants at that time. The benefits operationally are that there's no need to cart cans all over the country. It's just the concentrates. The dispenser is plumbed into a water supply and carbon dioxide supply to make the carbonated beverage. The important thing is that this has radically transformed the purchasing experience. In Coke's own words, we have done for the soft drinks industry what the iPod did to the music industry, completely altered how people interact in the buying decision. One of the interesting things is that the skills needed to produce this product, this instrument, this machine, or whatever you want to call it, this dispenser, finally, were very similar to the skills that we built up in the medical diagnostic devices industry, which is all about precision dosing, avoidance of cross-contamination and so on. So a good example of industry-to-industry transfer of innovative capability. At the other extreme, locally, Baraka to go, taking those little fizzy tablets and putting them into that neat little bottle So it's the tablet, the bottle and the water. I'm not sure how many of you would have used those, but they have been pretty successful. But the important thing from Bayer's point of view is that it gave a whole new market for their product. It sits around in fridges in hotels and things like that, which is not a place that you found Barocca before. But in particular, it allowed them to sell Barocca tablets at a far higher margin than when they just come out in that little metal tube. Without giving secrets away, I won't say how much, but it had a very dramatic effect on their profitability the year that it was launched. In that case, the product, the actual packaging, wasn't too complicated. The thing was the machinery to put it all together. Because it has medical claims, it's a vitamin product, it comes under the regulatory, the TGA rules, and therefore it has to be produced in a TGA-compliant manufacturing equipment. So to deliver success for that plant required the full suite, including competent machinery. Okay, so a couple of examples there. Why would firms such as Abbott, Philips, Roche, Coca-Cola, Leica, Bayer, GSK, this is a question that Beth raised, why would they choose to outsource strategically important major product development projects? There's some thoughts down the side of that slide, but to me I think there are four main reasons. One is if you're looking for a radically new and different product, fresh thinking matters, and that's more likely to come from outside the company than from inside the company. At the same time, it's going to be challenging and risky, and therefore, for them, it is a comfort to go to an organisation which has a long track record now of developing and delivering winners into global markets. Third reason, I think, and this is a very common one in our case, is because the development involves a skill set that is different from the client's own core competencies. If you look at a Coca-Cola or a Bayer or a Roche, their skill typically is in formulations and in some cases in diagnostic protocols and that kind of thing. But in order to win their customers, they need to provide best-in-class instruments or dispensers that will win the customers and pull through the sales of their typically very expensive reagents or consumables, which is where they make the money, and it's essentially the inkjet printer model. So the Coke machine for food and beverage outlets, the automated pathology sample processors for big pathology labs for Leica and Abbott, they would not typically have the skills to develop those things themselves. It's not their core competence. They don't feel threatened by going outside for that, because their core competence is, as I say, around the reagents and the biochemistry and the biomedical side of things. So, logical for them to go out. A brief digression. It's interesting to look at how things have changed. That's a list, a top-of-mind list of the companies that Invitec was working for in the late 1970s, when in fact we were working almost 100% for Australian companies. It's a bit sobering how few of those are still in Australia doing product development, making products today. Our world has changed a bit, I have to say. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. I'd like to go back and go through where did this come from? How did it start? So let me take you back to the 1960s in a completely different place, Cambridge. Oh, sorry, I need to do that call. That's what I'm looking for. The initial start was a company called Cambridge Consultants Limited, which I guess a few people may have heard of. They were, I believe, pretty much the first in class of doing this kind of work. They started something that led to many things in many directions. Locally, CCL was a major contributor to the Cambridge phenomenon, and I won't waste time now, but I've got a page out of the book on the Cambridge phenomenon that shows the 30 or 40 companies that came out of Cambridge consultants in the Cambridge area. It was also the beginning of the DNA that led eventually down to Invetech, as you can see on that chart there. But go back to Cambridge Consultants. It was a lot of things. It was a leader in hi-fi equipment, for example. We developed a proton precession magnetometer, which was actually a forerunner of what eventually became MRI a decade or two later. We were, to the best of my knowledge, the inventor of inkjet printing, which we were providing inkjet printers to the British Post Office in, that would be the late 1960s. And again, I've got a list which I can show you afterwards of the 10 or 15 inkjet printing companies today, all of which can be directly traced back to people who came out of Cambridge Consultants at that time. So we were technically fearless and creative, but we were commercially naive. We didn't understand that rapid growth means you need more and more and more and more cash to fund working capital, and we went broke. Great fun, but unfortunately not as profitable as we should have been. Well, profitable, yes, but cash flow, no. Difference between profit and cash. We eventually discovered these things, don't we? So a few of us decided to press on, and we moved to PA Consulting Group to set up PA Technology. Anybody here remember the PA Consulting Group? A few around. In those days, it was one of the world-leading management consultancies with a strong focus on the manufacturing sector, client-focused, deeply commercial, highly respected, just what people from CCL needed. The second strand of our DNA came in at that point, the commercial strand. We understood now that our task was mostly not to go broke, but also to create business success for clients. And it worked. PA Technology was awarded the Queen's Award for Technological Achievement in 1975. We developed what I think is probably the world's first DVD, and I've got a sample here again if anybody wants to see afterwards, in about 1970. Yeah, about 75 also. The first digital micrometer for Moore and Wright, the world's first self-service petrol pump that built a barcode and things. So you could say that bringing those two elements together created a number of significant world firsts. Then, fairly simple from there on, I came to Australia to set up PA Technology in '76. In '86 we did a management buyout. and retitled ourselves Invitech, so that's where Invitech came from. We weathered Black Monday, the first global financial crisis and its aftermath in 1987. We survived. By an irony, the three venture capitalists who had provided backing for the MBO all went bust, but we survived, which is the reverse of the usual model. And here we are today in the business of product development. Key inputs to product development. What does it take to do successful product development? I think there are simply three key elements which we need to bring together. Creativity, doing something new that's never been done before. High-class technical skills and entrepreneurship. Now, why do I include entrepreneurship? Simple example. Leading a product development project, you're constantly making decisions. And typically, these involve trade-offs between four sets of goals. What are the features and performance of your product? When do you want to launch it? What will it cost to make? And how much money have you got to do the development project? And you can trade any one of those off against any other. You can sacrifice features to reduce the project budget. You can accelerate the development, but that will increase the project budget. You can reduce the cost of production, but that means spending more on project budget or sacrificing features and so on. These are all obviously commercial decisions rather than just technical decisions. I think knowing the value of time, which is the value of the launch date, it's fairly simple to do the maths, but people often don't do it. Let's say you've got a product which is going to be on the market, $10 million a year sales at a 40% gross margin. If you do the value of time, a day late, etc., the value of time is $40 a minute. And if everybody on the product development team bears that in mind, it keeps a good sense of urgency. It's also a complex balancing act. On the left-hand side, basically, is a list of things that you have to do because you're trying to get something done within a budget by a date. On the right-hand side are the things that allow for freedom, for breaking out, for innovativeness, for creativity. And somehow you have to reconcile those. And these are the skills of managing, but also culture matters. I'll let you, reading through those, I could talk for a long time on what each of those is about and how we develop that. But from talking to people who have been at Invitech and left and come back, or left and stayed out, whichever, the culture was always defined as something unusual, and in my view, something that was critical to Invitech having achieved what it has. Okay, so my 20 minutes is pretty much up. Bringing it to a close. My key take-home messages are, it's all about a focus on the client. It's about understanding the client, client's business, the client's market, the client's competitors, the client's strategy. It's about working in open partnership with the client, no secrets, no surprises. It's about having, for everybody in the organisation, priority on creating business success for the client, being ready to crawl over broken glass to achieve the prerequisites for success. Whether we make money or not is secondary, but if we do well for the client, we will make money. And never forgetting that in this business, you are only as good as your last project, so every project matters. One final thought. Whilst it's a bit dispiriting that there is no longer a large number of companies in Australia who are of the kind that are natural clients for Invitec, let's remember that if you believe what I've just told you, Invitec is one of the top 2 or 3 in the world in this sector. Despite distance and time zones and currency exchange problems and national profiles, clients such as the ones that I've shown you over there choose Invitec in preference to their local suppliers and come back for more despite our being tucked away in Melbourne. So to end on a positive note, when it comes to doing world-class product development, as Mr. Obama might have said, yes we can here in Australia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought we would take questions after Paul's had his presentation.
Oh, I've got my own little toy here. So I think I know what to do. I have to go and then do a little. There we go. Spot the name.
Right.
Here we go. Hi, so thank you for inviting me to this talk, and wonderful talk there before me. In fact, many of the themes were the same, except our centre is a startup in many ways. It's very small, and we're looking at small to medium enterprises. So I thought I'd sort of go through a little bit about what the Centre for Design and Innovation does at Swinburne and give you an idea of how we approach innovation. We have our own website. It's called CDI Engage, and I've got handouts here for you to go to it. And we were set up about 2.5 years ago to create a new breed of design researchers. A new breed in our game because in many ways design can be understood on so many different levels. We often look at design from an aesthetic point of view. You see beautiful sculptures and gallery exhibitions and so on. And that's still there. There's still a sense of anarchy in all designers. And then you have architectural design, building design, you have engineering design, and it goes on. We've focused on that interface between humans and the world we make. So that's pretty important because one of the key things in innovation from our point of view is that we make a distinction between innovation and invention. So with innovation, we see it as being an uptake phenomena. Where there's desirability, people use it, you see uptake. Invention might be something that's in storage until one day it has uptake. So from our point of view, that's pretty key because if you have a service, a product, a space, or something that requires human interaction, to get the uptake, you need to know something about the human interaction. And so the Centre for Design Innovation places its research in this humanities technical combination space. And I've got that background. I've got a background that bridges cognitive sciences in abnormal psych as well as in the social sciences, because I was trained as a consultant for the manufacturing industry to look at management techniques and human behaviour. But to do that, I had to be trained in engineering and design to understand manufacturing processes. So it's that kind of combination you'll see in this new breed of design researchers. And the teams are similar. So we were set up about 2.5 years ago with our first TIC, and we had a historical external income from businesses of something in the order of 280,000 in total, which is quite small for a research centre. Since getting administrative approval for the centre at the end of 2014, we're now approaching almost 3 million in that short space of time. So we've got a good rise, and that's all because of our strategy, which I'll show you here. So we're very clear on what we're about. The things that the client seeks are something in the order of human scale products, and usually for SMEs, not for your scale of clients. Your clients are like that. Ours are in the middle range. There's lots of clients in the SME range. Symbols, which we refer to as graphic communications and information, service systems, and internal spaces, so interior architects are in our team. And mainly what we do is we focus on the user experience and we engage the community and industry. And one of the other things that's often not associated with design research is evidence-based. So we're big on that because we want to defend the reason why we're going a certain direction with a client. So typically there's a project, we look at the user circumstance, we try and understand the human qualities and values and cultural issues behind it, and we then draw on our technical side and our technical teams across Swinburne to create a response that the company or business likes. And the reason for this is because of this quote here, that user-centred designers engage actively with the end users to gather insights, co-create often with the client as well as their clients. Ultimately, for example, it's one thing to create a product for a business, but the business has to sell the product or have people use the service. So we have to know your market group as well. And we've divided us up into a kind of a matrix program where these are the sources that we're trying to focus our attention. So to this area, we're looking at allied health products and services, retail sector, service that's not health related, and a bit of public good. And being a university centre, we also are keen on another area which we don't talk about in the public arena, and that's theory, philosophy, and pure basic research. Okay? You need that to deliver on this. And the three areas of expertise in our group is what we call strategic and transformative experience. I'll give some examples of that in a minute. We have a group focusing on productivity and diversification, and we have a group more along the lines of aesthetics and ergonomics and human factors. And human factors includes things like the physiology of the person and sometimes the psychophysiology, which will be an example I'll show at the end. So this is our highly technical scientific business plan. So we're basically monitoring how much of our effort and resources we can put towards the deeper end. Okay? So it works a bit like this. Very often some small companies, they don't have the money to sort of invest in some big research, but they do want ideas. So there's a lot of small ideas, projects, which we get involved with, and we often involve students with that. And we have a great partner unit with us called the Design Factory, which I'd like to sort of note, who are really good at this area here, where you come in with an idea, you ask a bunch of students to pop up ideas for you, which may or may not be useful. but there may be a good one in there. Okay? And that's usually what we call concept projects. There's low risk in the sense that it's somewhere between anything as low as $5,000 to $30,000 for the project. There's low return because you don't know if that outlay is going to get you the project you want, but there's high engagement turnover, so you get to know how design works a bit. Most of our research in the research centre is in these two areas, and this is where there's often something complex involved, and the target is to have uptake or impact. Okay? So this is contracted projects, and I'm going to give you some examples in a moment. These are normally done by staff because we find that you need to meet a deadline, you need to meet price points, you need to meet manufacturing specifications and so on. So you need people who have experience and know how serious it is to do something right. So if we do have students, they're usually shadowing us rather than actually leading it. Whereas it's the other way around up here. And this is the basic research. This is where we are looking at working with governments and bigger companies who want to be upstream with the fresh new knowledge before a competitor gets it. And it's the disruptive research. It's got a longer cycle to get a return. The risk is high, but the return is significant if we can get it right. And I'll finish off with an example of that. So, just a cap on how I see the products and services innovation game. A key here is that this idea that, if I can summarise it in some ways, before when your manufacturing industry tried to make more money, they would just make more stuff. And the more you can make more stuff, it was just assumed it'll be selling. So you can make more productivity by making more profit from making more stuff. But eventually others are making more stuff too, who are competing in your game. So you have to make your stuff cheaper. Often that's pushing down salaries or finding a more cost-effective way to produce, an efficiency gain. Then it comes down to adding more features, more ideas, something that's more interesting, something that gives you an advantage, as well as meeting those other requirements. And eventually you find that your in-house ideas pool is not as creative as it was. It's been exhausted. So we look at the idea of partnering upstream, suggesting to companies, look, if you work, after you've exhausted your internal ideas, consider working with people who are creating the new knowledge, and the university is a great place to do that. A lot of small consultancy businesses don't have time or the resources to take the risks to do the development work for new knowledge, but we can, because that's what a university is for. So after you've done all that exhaustion, what's next? The pressure to innovate is big. It's really a knowledge game. One reason why my colleague before is successful is not, I don't think it's because of your technical expertise as on its own, it's because of the new knowledge behind the technical expertise that has given that company an advantage. It's the new knowledge is actually the capital. And that is a pretty big investment agenda. And it's probably better to have centres and institutions that are good like that to partner with, so you can tap into the upstream before it comes to the rest of your competitors. So drawing on the outside consultants are good, but there's two key things that you don't get unless you work with centres like us, and that is research-based information that hasn't yet been published, that is on its way of being developed, that you might want to tap into to see how it can work with your area. But because we do this a lot with clients, we also have ideas on how that can be, our knowledge can be used as a secret ingredient into something else. Here's some of the typical companies we've been asked to produce things for. I'm going to show some examples of a few of these. So in this scenario, the client did not know that they had a problem. So often we start in design with the idea that there's a problem to solve or a task to do. But what happened here is we ventured in, a door-knocking appeal, if you like, and went out to a few manufacturing places, and we found this one place that didn't know it had a problem. So we identified something that they didn't realise was an issue. And in resolving a response to that, it became a real productivity gain. So I'll give you an insight what this is about. So here, this company was into manufacturing assets. It was producing for a certain market which fell through, and it had this really big equipment lying around. So this is a metal punching machine, and this is a laser cutter machine, okay? So they were focusing on this, and we noticed over here this thing was quite clean. And we asked, how come, what do you make with that? And they said, oh, we use that about once a week to punch out some sheet metal. And we said, can we focus on that? Because that's a pretty big asset. They cost quite a lot of money. And we started to have a look at growth sectors in the industries, in the market, that could do with a new product from punched out metal. And we ended up producing a range for the do-it-yourself Bunnings market, which was not their traditional market. And it came up with a whole heap of specifications like this being produced, 3 products, 6 designs, 4 finishes. And these are beautifications for urban housing, so you grow your plants up the side. And what we were able to produce, where they were first trying to do it with laser cutting, we were able to bring that down to a fraction of the price by redesigning the idea and making it work on a nibbler and a punching machine. I think I have some stats on this, but what happened, we do some engineering testing. This is the virtual testing for wind load on some of these things. And the end of our result, it looks like that. That machine, that punching machine now is used 5 days a week because of these new products instead of just 1 day a week. So that's a big productivity gain for them. Another example is where the client knew their problem. They knew they had to diversify. They were a plastics manufacturer and they just didn't know what to make with their machines. And so they were looking at what they told us was a 50% loss in their market because they were heavily dependent on hubcaps and other injection moulding devices for the car industry in Victoria. So what we did was have a look at 3 growth sectors and targeted some products. It was with MHG, a tier 1 plastics manufacturer, if anyone knows about plastics manufacturing. All the products that we offered them were in growth areas. We saw the growth areas being in the supermarket, the hardware do-it-yourself, and the construction industry. And we met a couple of times. Their in-house solution, however, was to get us to consider making golf buggies out of more plastic moulding. And the reason for that is that most of the staff in-house happen to be avid golfers. So what we did was we had a look at that and we suggested that that market may not be as big as they think in terms of the competition they're against and the opportunity to do something in plastics in that area. But we felt that these other markets, which were in the supermarket, the do-it-yourself hardware, and aspects of the building and construction industry might have been best. We ended up producing full specified engineering documentation, so it can go straight to production of these things. What happened is that we highlighted that in the supermarket sector, more and more apps like this are being produced, but now people are walking around in the supermarket with a phone doing things. So the next thing we thought was one of the opportunities looking and observing people, that's the human factors if you like, in the supermarket is what to do with your phone when you're trying to get over and you've got your hand full here and you're trying to grab things off the shelf, was to create a very simple but effective secure system that locks various sized phones in there and tightens it with a device that will tell you if someone's trying to fiddle with it while you turned your back to it. And this has now become a real interest item to Woolies to consider bringing this in on their trolleys. But sometimes we notice, the family scenario where you've got to somehow keep your kids entertained as well. So when this was designed, it was designed so it can flip over and create a game or some entertainment for them. So it was a flippable device that you can turn over, if you see here, to allow them to sort of see something or watch something. Another one that we proposed was this idea of the do-it-yourself market, where the Masters, the Mitre 10s, the Home Hardwares and the Bunnings, they just didn't have anything that we thought was a viable idea for when you're decanting a large paint container into a small paint container and walking up a ladder, and the ergonomics of holding the weight of the paint and the brush while trying to paint and climb was a bit of an issue based on what they were providing on the shelf at the moment. So all this was like punched out by someone who didn't really think through the problem for that category of product. And so we had a really good look at that because we felt we could do something in that space. And we came up with this, and this is coming into Bunnings as well now, as a result. It's an unusual sort of device where you put your hand underneath it rather than hold it like that. It has much better ergonomics. It's got a strong magnet which is embedded. You can't really see it here, but it's embedded in there. And that holds your brush. Believe it or not, pretty much every brush that you'll find on the market has a metal, an iron sheath around it, so that is why the magnet was chosen. And there's a scraping bar that actually clips in across there. So this is now coming to Bunnings as well, and it looks a bit like that. It has much more durability and high appeal. The handle here is designed so you can hold it with your thumb and get some success out of it. I'll just see if I've got some stats on that. No, not on that one. One of the last product-oriented examples I want to show you is where the client knew their ideal solution, but they didn't believe it could be made. So this is a windows making company that was trying to create a skylight that was met all fire rating specifications. And apparently, up until now, no skylight met all fire rating specifications. And they thought this would be their market advantage to produce it. At the moment, they were creating one, manually manufacturing it in their workshop, taking about 16 hours to produce each skylight. Right? We were able to provide a solution that took 2 hours to produce, and now 80% of their manufacturing time is on this new product that we've made for them. And it works like this. So they estimate from their own sales forecasts with pre-orders now of getting about 10,000 units in the first year of operation from not having any in that space. And we were able to provide some rather good various concept works in the beginning stage. Then we go into what we call the rendering stage. Then we go into, this is a key component, functional prototyping, so that they can see what the extruded molds and key features are that we've put in. And then they went into discussing the options from a business plan with us. And then they actually went out, and this scared us a bit because it wasn't too far in where they realised that they wanted to start making this thing and started ordering $300,000 worth of specially extruded parts. And we felt like, hang on, just let me finish testing this. But nonetheless, they went ahead and they're really happy with it. We had the unit here tested in this furnace to make sure it met the specifications for fire rating. Then you have to sit for an hour and let it cool. And what happened here is a slight crazing and cracking of the glass, but that's normal, and it still met all specifications. And you can see the team at the end being very happy with the final result. But we also do other important stuff that it has surprisingly a commercial market value, but the objective is humanitarian. And I'm going to just spend a few moments of my time on this, not much time I mean by that. We're looking at this issue of, it first came to us from the agenda we had to look at allied health and also public good. We sit in the Faculty of Health, Arts and Design, so it was natural to look at issues to do with well-being and health. We know about tsunamis. We have people who are in our team who were there at Che and became part of our team to look at housing solutions post major events. And there's this thing. There's an increasing number of disasters happening in the world, particularly in developed countries, believe it or not, in the flood and fire zone of issues. So we're about to sign an agreement with Untitled University in Indonesia. We're working with the UN. We're working on the idea of what we call the humanitarian village, where we'll be eventually seeking companies to partner with us to produce a whole, what we would call improvisable set of products that work with each other if you are missing parts and bits, right? So that when you have to set up a safe haven for a limited period of time, what can we produce initially for what we call the logistics end, which is the administration, the health centre, the food service and the medical, and then later for the accommodation end and the village setup. So there's a whole range of things that haven't really been properly looked at from a design point of view, and we're putting some deep research behind that so we can go to people like yourselves and say, there's an opportunity in these markets. You know, this is a global market to rethink, to have cleverer ways to address humanitarian product requirements. For example, one of our honours students produced this, Jonathan Yap. So that's a prosthetic foot. Now, the only other option at the moment for these humanitarian places is to get these $400, $500 wooden club feet made for children. And they're usually, you know, 4th, 5th, 6th hand, and they're not necessarily perfectly balanced for the weight of the child and all this sort of thing. And we identified that it might be possible if we use additive printing to create something straight from additive printing without any modification. And the wholesale price of material involved there is only $15. And we've had it tested for its capacity to handle the kind of wear and tear. And what this means is it's possible to create in a village setup a unit that can produce certain kinds of prosthetics simply by sending adaptive files to them. So they can produce a customised leg just for that child for that time. Another area which I wanted to highlight is something we're really keen on to finding a partner with is, did you know that helmets, there isn't a helmet that we know of today that was designed to help protect you against concussion, okay? All the helmets today are engineered to stop a linear force cracking through into the skull and, you know, spreading the force sideways instead of at you. But no one's looking at what's happening inside the brain as it's sloshing around. Now, the medical fraternity are looking at that, but they're not looking at how it associates with the sports forces. So what we're doing right now with Melbourne Ice, the ice hockey group here, is we've got them all strapped up with 6-degree axis accelerators behind their ears. And we have another research PhD student here who's looking at jockey vests as well. And the idea is to associate internal design factors to the body so that we can develop the external parameters that associate with those internal injuries. So we have what we call a transmagnetic stimulator, a TMS. We're taking bloods and saliva. We're doing the standard psychology test, which is a verbal test that you currently give at the moment in sports. And we're associating the brain, the symptoms of the brain being under stress, which appears in these tests, with the kinds of lineal and rotational forces on the head. And then that will, when that study's finished, that'll give us the ideas of how to start designing sensors. We need someone to help us design sensors and to design a whole new kind of headwear that is less about a helmet, it's about the idea of something actually looking after you, playing with you, and telling you and your health coach how you're going. And this is a whole new way of thinking about protective wearables, designing from the inside out rather than the outside in. And then that interest, to finish up, took us to India, where we've been asked to look at developing a better helmet for India, because it's quite hot and humid there, and they're worried about many things. But here's another problem in the user experience. From a cultural point of view, there are turbans and other factors to consider, and also how many people are on this scooter. Right? There's 4 people on that scooter. 1 with a helmet, 2, 3, 4. So even if they all have a helmet of some kind, how do they fit? Right? So you can either try and tell a culture not to have 4 people on the scooter, or you recognise there are certain socio-economic and cultural realities there that you have to rethink not only the design of what has to work there, but we were just told 2 days ago that the Indian government, with our counterpart team in the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, who are working with us on this, have just held the first meeting to create a whole new set of helmet standards so that we can have more freedom in designing a response to that. So we're now changing a country's standards, which is pretty awesome. And that's it. If you want more information on some of the projects we were able to make public, you can go to that website there, and I've got some brochures here.
Thank you very much, Cord. That was excellent. Do you want to come back, Cord, and for questions? So, do people have questions about Alexander and Cord?
I've got a question for either speaker, but maybe Alexander. I'm interested in the IP relationship that you have with the clients on who owns